Hello and welcome to Speaking with Sonnet. Now today we've got double trouble. We've got Miss Morris,
Hi.
as always, and due to popular demand we have Mr Lavington, who a lot of you have said really want to see in one of these and not just behind the camera. They want him in front of the camera.
Quite right.
So yes, where he should be, in front of the camera. So we are doing Curious again, and what we're going to look at in this one is we're going to look at the narrative, the plot, the structure, how things change from the start, the journeys the characters go through, that kind of, the idea that it is something that is dramatised on the stage. As I said before, they are not real. Okay, these people are not real, and it has been dramatised in such a way to add to the effect of it being about Christopher's particular mind. So, do either of you want to start off by saying how it starts, what we learn?
So before, on the first page, we have some stage directions which say, all actors remain on stage unless prescribed otherwise. There is also a dead dog with a fork sticking out of it. And scenes run into one another without interruption, regardless of alterations in space or time or chronology. And what I love about that is a stage direction, but there's also a little bit of humour in it. There is also a dead dog, full stop, with a fork sticking out of it, full stop. It adds a little bit of humour straight away, so we know this is going to be a kind of dark comedy. And also the fact that the actors all stay on the stage and the scenes all run over each other symbolises how Christopher's mind works and how time doesn't necessarily work in a linear fashion like it does for us, but things that kind of happen randomly in a way.
Yeah, and what we would think, I think, as the audience members would be there's a sense of the chaos.
Yeah.
And it's being quite chaotic. And I think this is one of the ways that we get an insight into Christopher's particular mind, is the fact that sometimes it can be quite confusing as to think about what's happening at what point in time. But for Christopher, I think what this indicates is that he only picks out the most important things of things, and everything else is superfluous and unimportant
Especially
to him.
social interactions.
Yes.
They all kind of blur for
Yeah.
him. They're not that important.
And I think that's why they have the same people, this ensemble on stage, playing lots and lots of different characters. That's a good point, actually. It could be because they are unimportant to him.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Well, it's like, and maybe we can talk about this a bit more in a second as well, but the props as well on the stage, you don't have, like if Christopher's lying on his bed, they don't have a bed. Like I always say to my students, it's a really high budget, well-known play, so if they wanted to put a bed on the stage, they could afford it, but they chose to use boxes, these really simple boxes, or they've got actors who hold Christopher up.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting that's because, like you said, it's almost superfluous to Christopher.
Yeah.
All those details are not important.
Do you want to
I
add
agree.
Yeah, we brought him on for his brain.
On the looks.
So and then it starts a media res, like you said before, again, because I think this highlights the fact that a beginning is superfluous to Christopher. He doesn't think it's important. What happens is the book is about the dead dog, so it starts with the dead dog. It doesn't start with my mum died, and I live with my dad, and it starts like when Mrs. Shears says, "What in f***'s name have you done to my dog?" So it actually starts, and you can imagine some of the kids in the audience especially be like, "Oh, mother!"
Yeah, but even adults as well, I think.
Yeah.
To go to the theatre and hear swearing, it's even in this day and age, it's still quite rare, isn't it?
Yeah.
But like you said, because it starts in the middle of the action, we're all right there with it while it's happening. Makes it more exciting, because it's an entertainment. It's a play, isn't it? It's meant to be entertaining.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you want to say anything about the start, or?
It's because obviously I kind of came into this just reading it to do this kind of
than
anything. So I was kind of reading through it, and it took me a couple of times to read through it because I did think, like with the copies, I was like, have I missed something?
Yeah.
Which I found quite interesting as well. And then I kind of compared it to the book, and it opens in a similar way. I found like when you kind of get to know story as well, like speaking of when it could have started, there's so many points it could have started. Especially with Christopher, who kind of likes logic, you could have thought that maybe he could have started it with the idea of the affair and stuff like that, and then getting to know them. Because you don't even realise that Mrs. Shears has interacted with Christopher quite a lot and spent time with the father. That's
until
kind of
at the end of the first act.
It's only mentioned when the dad mentions, well, she sometimes I thought she cared more about the dog than us. It's like, I didn't know she cared at all, especially coming out with...
But that's again maybe because of the way Christopher's mind works. He feels like that information's
unimportant.
by the by.
Yeah.
It
you know.
starts with his investigation.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
what's important to him, the dog
Yeah.
dying.
Yeah, he plays like a detective almost,
Yeah.
and that's probably how he sees himself when he was writing it.
Do you
Yeah.
think that it makes you does it, if you look at it like that, do you think it makes Christopher seem, we may suggest, quite selfish and self-absorbed? Or do you think that's part of his particular mind?
I think it's probably part of his particular mind, because I think if he was told that, like, just kind of when he is doing the kind of detectiveness and stuff, I've forgotten the name of the character, the older lady, when she goes
Mrs.
off,
Alexander?
yeah, she's so lovely and kind of calm with him, and it's like, I could have this, and then, I'll get some biscuits,
Yeah.
and then he leaves, because he's like, kind of right or wrong, I'm not supposed to be,
Yeah,
speaking to strangers.
strangers.
It's not like, if I leave, I'll upset this lady.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's kind of really to the point, and it's hard for him to kind of distinguish, and I think that's kind of shown in this, like, it could have kind of almost shown more emotion towards it. It's just one after the other, especially before
Yeah.
that, it's like somebody makes a joke at him, he walks away.
Yes. And there's lots of those little snippets where he goes and does his detecting, and he's talking to lots of different people, and it happens very quickly, doesn't it? There's, and then I went and saw this one, I went and saw that one, and I think, like you say, it really focuses on what is important with Christopher. Just going back to that bit where you were talking about the fact that it is Siobhan and the story. So this is on page 14. Siobhan says, Christopher, if your father's told you not to do something, maybe you shouldn't do it. Well, we're meant to be writing stories today, so why don't you write about what happened to Wellington? So even then, it's something that has been suggested to him by Siobhan, and we've talked about the need that he has for her support. But what it does again is it kind of frames the whole of this drama, doesn't it? When you look at it a bit more closely, this drama is him. It's not a snapshot that we have seen of something happening. It happens because of Christopher writing this book. And I think that's something that sometimes we can forget in the dramatisation.
Yeah.
And the structure of the whole thing, it's all about this book that he is writing.
Yeah, and speaking of structure, he the book that he's been told to write at this point is the book that we're reading or we're seeing performed on the stage, which makes it it breaks the fourth wall in a way, because
Yes.
we're aware that we're the audience watching the play, and we're aware that he's aware that we're aware. So it's meta, and it breaks the fourth wall, and it's clever as well because of the way Christopher is. His play symbolises that. Speaking of good places to start the play, that actually would have been where is
Yes.
it? The line you just bit.
There. Why don't you write about what happened to Wellington?
Maybe that would have been the place to start, logically speaking, because that's the beginning, isn't it?
Yeah, but what? Well, it's not though. Is
No.
it? The dog dying is.
But
the
isn't
beginning.
that brilliant? Like, there is no actual beginning, really. You could have started anywhere, and the story still has the same point. What's lovely about the dog dying and that being the focus is that shows us what's important to Christopher,
Yep.
and also from that is where he learns all these other things in his life.
Also, I think what it shows is that we only hear about his mother on page 12.
Mm-hmm.
So the dog is more important
Yeah.
to him than his mother dying. If you're thinking about the death of both of them, the detecting that he does about his mother only comes secondary to what actually happens to Wellington.
But is that because he's made peace with his mum dying and he's moved on?
I
And there was no
more
mystery.
His obsession, because like
Yeah.
when Toby falls onto the railway tracks,
Yes.
he's not kind of listening to anyone else. It's just that, so like it's almost like the fixation.
Yeah.
The fixation is Wellington. We'll move on to my mother. Like
Yeah.
once I find out what happened to this dog.
But is that because he had no control over his mum? There was nothing he could have done. His dad just said to him, "Your mum has died."
Maybe.
But there is that there is that point where he says, this is on page 12, Mother died 2 years ago. I came home from school one day, no one answered the door, so I went and found the secret key that we keep under the flower pot. And then he's talking about Ed and Christopher talking, and then Ed says, no, it's an ordinary hospital, she had a problem with her heart, and Christopher said, we'll need to take food to her. So it's reinforcing how unemotional he is, he doesn't see the bigger picture, and again, it's not important to him, I don't think, in terms of her being there. She's sick, so therefore she needs food. So it's like that kind of linear way that he thinks, very unemotional and obviously very atypical, isn't it?
Because there's moments as well when he mentions his mum died like to Miss Alexander. She's
Yeah.
like, oh, I had no idea. And
Yeah.
she tries to comfort him, but it's wasted.
It's like, well, she's dead. There's nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
What are you going to say?
But I don't think that means he doesn't care. I think he does care. Like the food is massive. That's a really caring thing to say. Just because he didn't express his concerns in the way that a neurotypical person would. Like, oh, mummy, is mummy okay? I think it's still his way of showing that he cares.
I guess because food's really important to him as well, because he's
Yeah.
really particular about the food
Yeah.
he eats, so maybe that's his first thought. It's like, well, if I was
Yeah.
ill, I'd want somebody to come in to make sure I'm not eating any yellow.
See,
Yeah.
I think the reason why when he finds out about when he finds out about Judy and he is sick, I don't think that it's because he's finding out she's alive. I think it's because he found out Ed lied to him, which is such a major thing,
Yeah.
rather than Judy being alive.
That works.
So if you have a look on page 46, Christopher, so Ed comes in, he finds Christopher having read all these letters. Christopher doesn't respond. After a time, Ed approaches him. Very, very gently, he touches his shoulder. Christopher doesn't respond.
Mm-hmm.
Would you think that he was like that because he realises she's alive?
I did initially, but now you're saying that, I'm changing my mind. Because I think that him investigating Wellington is him trying to have some control over something. That's why he goes into it full, because he didn't have that with his mother's death. There was nothing he could do. So that's why when Wellington dies, he puts all of his efforts into it. So when he finds out that his mother's still alive, it's something that was maybe subconscious that he wasn't aware of, that he didn't get that closure with his mother, and now all those feelings are bubbling up to the surface. That's how I interpreted him in vomiting. But I think you're right, actually. Ed lying is important to him because Ed hits him earlier on in the play and Christopher says, no, it's fine, hitting's fine.
Hitting's fine
Yeah.
as long as you don't.
Yeah, exactly. But when it comes to lying, he's like, no.
I don't tell lies.
Yeah.
And also then on page 48, this is his reasoning for leaving Ed and going to see his mother. Father had murdered Wellington. That meant he could murder me. I had to get out of the house. I made a decision. And the way he makes a decision is, I did this by thinking of all the things I could do and deciding whether they were the right decision or not. So even then, he doesn't go and see Judy because he wants to. He goes and sees Judy to get away from Ed.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, he still doesn't realise the importance of what Ed has done in terms of lying. He doesn't mention the fact that he's lying. He says, I've got to get out because he's going to murder me.
Yeah.
So I know that we've had these, I've had these conversations with students as well about the level with which Christopher can compute emotion. And I think this kind of subtly reinforces the fact that, does he care that his mum's alive or dead? I don't think so. Does he care that his father lied? Yes, he does. Does he care that his dad murdered the dog? Yes, he does. But that's just my opinion.
No,
Were you thinking
I
something
agree.
different?
Go on.
I think sometimes there's kind of two bits, isn't it? Because Judy is kind of constantly not there, but he can't pick up on that. Whereas because Ed's been like the kind of really strong point in his, like, this one thing has kind of shattered his world. You think that even if maybe he lied to him and his mum was there, he'd still have that reaction because of the relationship. I think it's more about how close they were to then kind of, especially because he is like the point of morality. He's like, Christopher, don't do this, like, and we'll give reason. So the fact that he lied is like, well, this is the person giving me the instructions.
Yeah.
How can I now trust anything?
Yeah.
So what it actually does is, and I've said this beforehand, how I think it's really unfair that Ed doesn't end up with Christopher, because I think Christopher sees Ed as his moral compass. Even though we see Ed as somebody who can be quite aggressive and quite abusive towards him, and you might think, oh, well, he's not as forthcoming as Siobhan is in terms of encouraging Christopher. I think in a way...
But I suppose Siobhan doesn't live with Christopher.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine living with someone like Christopher and parenting him by yourself as well as working.
Labour-intensive job as well. So
Yeah.
it's kind of going to be physically exhausting.
Yeah.
And to come back and having that emotional strain.
Definitely. But the play is separated into two parts as well, which is interesting because obviously in plays typically you get acts and scenes, but we've just got two parts in this play. Again, keeps it quite simple, quite logical for Christopher. There's kind of before he found out about his mother and his father lying, and after. So it's nicely separated out. So in part two we see him travelling to London and the difficulties that he faces with that. And you were talking about the voices earlier, what they could symbolise.
Yeah, so when he's kind of on the train to Swindon, there's kind of less voices of the pre-recorded ones, like voice 1, voice 2, voice 3, kind of going up. But then as soon as he goes to London, it kind of goes on for almost 3 pages worth just of kind of this overwhelming sense And it's almost like, because obviously the train journey is like kind of stepping up this emotional aspect for him, of him wetting himself on the train and stuff like that is kind of becoming more and more serious for him, but he feels like he has no other choice. It must be really hard to think that, like, if I stay here, I'm going to die. I'm going to have to go out my comfort zone and speak to strangers just to get out of it.
And that's the thing I don't think we realise, because we take a journey on a train to be so easy and such a part of our life. He is leaving his father because he thinks his father is going to kill him. Like, and actually, I don't think we really compute in our own heads his terror and his fear. Obviously, he is, incorrect in making that assumption, but that's the way that his mind works. Imagine if you were living in a house with someone you thought could kill you. You would just run, wouldn't you? Regardless of what it was that you were leaving and how difficult the journey would be.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that we kind of skip over, isn't it?
But that's also a bit of development for the character as well, I think, because we've seen him earlier on in the play where he sort of huddles up in a ball when there's an awkward situation, and now he's having to go out there and he's willingly, okay, maybe not willingly, but he's facing this situation to get away. And what I like about seeing this in the theatre is that these voices are all played over a loudspeaker. There's music, there's lights are flashing, the actor is all kind of like running and hiding.
And they're kind of they're overlapping, aren't they? Like,
I don't think
my floor, you're 50 people.
Exactly, you don't get that feeling when you read it off the page,
No.
so it's really important to see how it was intended.
Because this is so linear. And like you said when you read it, first of all, you don't get a sense of the way that they have dramatised it and the chaos.
Yeah.
It's so chaotic and it's so overwhelming, even for the audience, because there's that flashing light, isn't there, that can make it, quite stroby.
But then that obviously juxtaposes with the layout of the stage, which is really simplistic.
Yeah.
And you've just got like lines like graph paper.
Yeah.
So it's really nice, calming for Christopher's mind, but then all these things.
Yeah. And I think the stage is very much his mind.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's why so many things that we would consider important in terms of the plot, the introduction, it's just kind of out. It's in the darkness, and what's on the stage is what he thinks is important, and what is important to him.
Yeah.
Do you want to say any more about that on the change of? Or should we move on?
I think there's one bit for me, just when he's talking about giving Toby away and like you need to look after Toby.
Yeah.
I found that really sad as well, just because of the fact that it's like he's now thinking about other people. Obviously, he always loved Toby, but now it's like he's thinking of the safety of others. So I think there might be some sort of development before. Before he was like, well, I need to know who killed the dog because that's wrong. Whereas now it's almost like having to kind of take that extra step. So I think that was quite a big step for him as a character before his journey.
What, to put Toby before his own...
Yeah, so he's like, before he even was like, how am I going to get trained stuff like that? He's like, well, first I need to find a safe place.
That's a really good point, yeah. It's a selfless act
Yeah.
as far as Christopher goes.
Yeah, I found that really sad because I was just like, he must be so terrified, and to kind of put somebody above him. That's why I think at the end, when he gets the dog, it's kind of nice, but he now feels like he's got someone that can protect him.
Yes.
So it's kind of almost like he's becoming a bit more, whereas at the beginning it's very kind of cause and effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's certainly like he's moving beyond being either responsive or reactionary to something apart from the things that interest him wholly, which is, maths or anything to do with that. Now he's sort of developing his own active way of engaging with making things happen, I suppose.
Yeah.
Whereas beforehand he's very passive in the fact that he only makes things happen that he wants to, like going on the computer and playing all these games of
Well, in a way, it's going to London for him is like a lesson, and actually that's even more apparent when he hears Siobhan's voice in his head telling him what to do. It's almost like he's treating it like a lesson he would have in the classroom.
Yeah.
Which is nice because it means he's able to do it. I think if we move on to when he gets to his mother, unless there's anything else to say.
No, I'm just going to talk about the fact that, on the train, when he curls up into a little ball and when he wets himself, it's really creative the way that they do this on the stage, isn't it? Because they're all kind of like rocking, and as we said before, he doesn't really understand other people apart from the most important people. So, but he does it, doesn't he? He actually does it. And then you've got Siobhan's voice and the conflict between Siobhan's voice going, you can do this, think of the red line, and Ed's voice going, what are you doing? Come back. But yeah, let's go to where Judy
is when Judy gives Christopher a milkshake. Oh, I found it. Here we go. Page 82. It says Roger gives Christopher a strawberry milkshake, and then the conversation goes on. And then Christopher says, "It was Mother who gave me the milkshake." they look at him. It was Mother who gave the milkshake, not you. Judy picks the milkshake up. And then Christopher says, you need to shout more loudly at him, like you're really angry with him, not just being nice. Judy looks at him and nods.
Okay.
So I love that because it's breaking the fourth wall, but also Christopher is being not only a character in the play at that point, but also a director of the play.
Yeah.
Which I love that the writer didn't need to include that at all. And it's hardly ever happens. Is that twice it happens, something like that? And I love that that's put in there because it shows how much control Christopher has had over this play and how important it was for him to get it right.
And also, what I really love about that is it's reinforcing to the audience that this is Christopher's book. And we're watching something that would occur in his head.
Yeah.
And these are kind of very subtle. And you'd have to really look at them on the stage and study it to see it. But, you know, sometimes I think as we teach it as well, we kind of teach Judy and we teach Ed and we teach Siobhan as separate characters. And actually we've got to teach them, they're only Christopher's awareness of what Ed is like. Mm. You know, there's no sort of character development of Ed beyond his relationship with Christopher. That's true. There's no character development of Judy beyond her relationship with Christopher. So the only way we know she left and the reasons is because of the letter she wrote to... Yeah. There's no conversation between Ed and Judy without Christopher being there. You know, there's no conversations between Roger and Judy without Christopher being there. So even those, you know, those characters who are really important, you only see them through Christopher's eyes.
It's very Christopher-centric.
Yeah.
Which again symbolises his selfish personality traits.
Yeah, but we don't really... Sometimes I don't think we don't teach that with enough explicit focus on the fact that these are characters. You know, so if the question was how is Judy presented as a mother, you know, one of your first hypotheses could be like Judy is presented as Christopher's, you know, or in Christopher's
point of view.
Point of view of, you know. And even though he talked about things that he doesn't actually understand. So when she's talking about going and living with Jean, he doesn't really understand the importance of actually she's saying this to leave him. But you could talk more about the fact that it's all from Christopher.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's spot on. And a structural point as well.
Thanks, Liz.
It's all right. House point.
Could you add on to that then? Like, because when he goes to London, as soon as he remembers A-levels, he's kind of like, I need to go back. So once again, it's like, how important was it to go to London? Or was he just expecting his mum to be kind of come back? Do you think he was aiming to live in London, or do you think he was kind of just looking for...
Expecting to get her and everything to go back to normal again?
I don't think he thought that. I think, despite this massive mathematical brain, I don't think he can compute abstract thoughts. So I don't think he can compute, I want to do my A-level with what this will mean for Judy and what this will mean for going back to Ed. So he's very reactionary to what is immediate.
So to call him selfish is actually incorrect, isn't it?
Of course, yeah, I think so. It's selfish behaviour from a typical person.
But from his point of view, it's completely logical and rational.
Yeah, for his particular mind.
Yeah.
And actually, we did one of these with Miss Henry, and it was all about context and about being a family. You could add to that. It's all about Christopher's perception of what family is.
Yeah.
Which would be interesting to see if you... Obviously, this is all from Christopher's point of view, and he understands that Ed tried really hard to get the A-levels, like even throwing 50 quid, and as a Labour van man, that would be quite a lot of money just to... So clearly he does know the importance, or does he just think of it as the importance of the actual A-level as opposed to...
Yeah, I think that's probably what it is. Yeah. It's interesting because we look at it as Ed going, oh, he's trying so hard for Christopher, he's fighting for Christopher's rights. Christopher's thinking, I want to do my A-level. My dad said I needed to do my A-level. Yeah. Again...
My dad sees how important the A-level is. That's why he's doing
this.
But
my dad is like, I'm not doing this to show how great my dad is. I'm doing this because I want to do the A-level, so it's important to me.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of what one of the things that we mentioned at the beginning was it said all the scenes run into one another. You can see it on the page. Mr. Lavington might be able to do some magic while you do a close-up on the page for us. But you can see how the... these scenes, there's no like Act 3, Scene 2. Yeah. It just happens. There's no. It's a very non-linear structure. Things just happen when they happen in Christopher's mind. It's not like one moment we're in Judy's house and then the next minute we're in some other scene. For him, he doesn't feel like he needs to explain that to us.
It's like important to him.
We have to keep up. We're the ones who have to work hard.
Yeah, because then at one point Ed just shows up, doesn't he? It's like, how did he get
Yeah.
You've got to change your perception of what a play normally is when you go into this play.
Yeah.
It's completely different.
Something else I think is important is when Roger is with Christopher and he becomes very angry. So Christopher has obviously gone to his house and, you know, Roger was in this relationship with Judy, no mention of Christopher. They were obviously having a nice time living in London together as a couple without children. And then, you know, Christopher comes and basically causes a massive storm in their relationship and in the house. So on page 88, Roger comes in and he's very drunk and he's like, you think you're so clever, don't you? Don't you ever think about other people for 1 second? And then he grabs Christopher, Judy comes in the room, she grabs Roger, she pulls him away. And then Judy says, Christopher, I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry. I promise this will never happen again. So Judy and Roger then leave. Eventually he calms. And then the very next bit is Christopher said, what time is it? Judy says, it's 4:00. Christopher says, well, what are you doing? I'm packing some clothes. And so this is where they're leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And again, going back to what you said about the time, there not being any sort of scenes, and then going back to what I said about this being from Christopher's point of view, there's no mention of the arguments that Judy and Roger would have had. There's no mention of that conflict. He doesn't pick up on any tension. The only thing he is aware of is how Roger is speaking to him and he's drunk. And, you know, that shows the lack of empathy that he has because of his condition.
Especially because when he's on the train, two drunk guys approach him, and it almost feels like they got more stage time about it and kind of more interactions. Because when he was sat on the bag kind of storage bit, that got more playtime than the bit where a stranger came in and attacked him when he was drunk, which I would have thought would probably be a bit more dramatic.
Exactly.
So it's really
especially because it's Roger, and this is something else as well. He doesn't hate Roger for running off with his mother, which goes back to my point about the fact that he doesn't really care his mum is dead or alive. He doesn't care about those personal relationships. I don't think he cares of motives. All he cares of
what can she
facts.
do for me? When she's here, what can she do for me?
Yeah, I don't even think he thinks like that. He doesn't think like, oh, what can she do? It's like, I want my A-levels. We're going back, you know. I'm not going to read, we're going back. I want to listen to the radio. And Roger's telling me off. I don't, you know.
Well, that's why he wants to be an astronaut, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because if in his ideal world, it's just him and Toby floating around in
space.
Everyone else is just an obstacle that he has to sort of overcome, but he's not that bothered about it.
But don't you think that's
because things seem to work themselves out, don't they, in his life? His mum or his dad will always sort things out for him. And in that sense, actually, we've had exam questions in the past that have said, in what ways is Christopher a typical teenager? And that is kind of a typical teenager thing, like, you know, your parents will always sort things out.
There's that expectation. It's not even a conscious thought, is it?
No.
That, they're going to do this
I might get in a little bit of trouble, but it's okay because mum and dad will sort it out.
Yeah. So then obviously they go back to Swindon and again, this is really funny. On page 91, it's a teeny tiny little bit. Mrs. Shears comes out and she says, you've got a nerve. Christopher says, where are we going? Swanning round here as though nothing ever happened. And Judy said, ignore her, Christopher.
I love that.
So
it's like
again,
an EastEnders bit. I love that bit.
But Christopher's not picking up on the fact that his mum ran away with Mrs. Shears' husband.
None of that.
You know?
We, as the audience, we have to pick up tiny little scraps that we get of this drama that we're kind of more interested in.
Yeah.
And we have to piece it all together ourselves.
And actually, once you really, really say the play like that, you can think, God, everything is about Christopher.
Yeah.
Everything is about Christopher. Every single dialogue, every single change in the scenery.
But do you know what? What I've just thought was brilliant. Christopher, this whole novel, could be a detective story, but we have to also be detectives to figure out what the hell's going on because Christopher doesn't tell us.
Yeah.
So we have to listen carefully and make inferences based on everything everyone says and try and piece it all together. And so when Mrs. Alexander says, "Oh yeah, your mum had an affair," it's like, thank you, Mrs. Alexander. We got another piece of the puzzle.
Doesn't he say something like, yeah? He's like, and again, there's no reaction.
Are they doing sex or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it had to explain, like, so why are you telling me this? She's like, because I need to tell you this because I've hinted at it, whereas I think she could have probably got away with it. It would have probably gone over his head, but...
Yeah. But he doesn't do anything with that information because it's not important to him.
No, he doesn't go to Ed and say, you okay, Dad? I've just found out what's happened.
Yeah.
Also, for a character that old and stuff like that, it must have been very dramatic, the whole leaving. It must have been quite theatrical because obviously she stumbles to the door and like she's clearly quite old and doesn't get out much. She gets excited when she gets a visitor.
Yeah.
So the fact that this gossip even reached her must have
Yeah,
been like,
I
good
see.
point,
Yeah,
Mrs. Alexander. And she's quite a sweet character. If you ever got a question on how is Christopher supported, I think there's lots of minor characters, and she is one of them, isn't she?
yeah, and the punk in the train station.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Guy with the socks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to look at the end now. You said something really nice about the dog, about Sandy.
Yeah, because it's a golden retriever, so it's yellow, and it feels like there's a bit more to that. Like, obviously, they could have chose any colour for the dog, so the fact it's a golden retriever makes it feel like he now sees a bit more past, kind of, I don't like yellow. It's a bit like, well, actually, you can associate emotion to it. It's not just about the colour. It's also quite nice that it feels like the whole Toby thing. I'm pretty obsessed with Toby.
Yes.
I really like Toby.
Toby the rat.
I feel like, I guess it's because it really humanises Christopher, and it makes me
Yeah.
think that no, he's not, doesn't just care about himself. So now he quite likes it, but then again, he loves the dog, and then when he's talking about how he's going to go off to university, he's instantly like, and I'll bring my dog.
Yeah.
But then he also quite likes the dog because it's his security from his dad, which
Yeah.
makes me think, is he once again just using another person or character, animal, for his own need, or does he actually love it like he loved Toby? Because I just don't see the point in having a pet rat. Which is bad because my sister has like loads of pets like that. So Tolly, if you're watching, sorry, but I just don't see the point.
No, I hate rats. I hate.
But
their little
remember,
tails.
when he's down on the tracks, when Toby says, "You come back up here, Toby," he talks to him like he's a little kid, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So maybe it's his chance to be the parent and
have a bit of control.
and have the control again, but also, his parents weren't brilliant a lot of the time.
So maybe
Can't
it's
blame
what
them.
he wanted to be, his parents to be
Yeah.
like, oh, that's much nicer for you.
Yeah, and now you said it's like it's almost full circle. I don't know, no, it's
Yeah.
180. It's different.
Yeah.
Because now he's got someone to look after him.
There's also a bit when he,
Something.
sorry, flick onto the maths.
Yeah.
Because he says, when he's trying to explain it to people, he says it's like putting a program in a computer. I can't find it. But he kind of uses...
It's there as well.
Algebra is like a computer program that works for whatever numbers you put into it. So he's suddenly being able to explain stuff using the kind of language which I guess is...
Oh yeah, like this is how you could look at it.
Yeah.
Which is a bit of empathy in a way, isn't it?
So-
and an understanding of how not everyone thinks like he does.
Exactly, and then with the dog as well, it shows that I think, and I'd like to think, for the kind of make me happy, that he has kind of come along and he's going to be happy forever. And he's going to go to uni, and somehow he'll be the first rat dog astronaut in space. And
You could be Christopher, I'll be Toby, and you could be Sandy. And
Yeah. just no yellow as well. It's just like,
can't wear that, miss. It's too
No.
close to yellow.
yeah.
Sorry, Christopher.
Well, it's interesting because I've spoken to this Sarah, Miss Henry, and you about it. I think it ends sadly.
I think so. That's why when I read that bit, I was like, no, it can be happy, but yeah, it does, because it's Siobhan being like the closest person.
Yeah.
But hold on, this is the play. What we're reading here is the play that he wrote, not what necessarily actually happened. I know it's not real, but bear with. Maybe this is the dramatic ending to the play that he wanted, because he wrote that. He maybe doesn't understand what Siobhan meant by that silence. He also ended with this really happy maths appendix, which has all the confetti, the swear words in there, using as much theatricality as we can throw at it, using music, lights, sound, lasers, the boxes, everything on the stage is really happy. Yeah. So it does have a happy ending.
Could you argue, though, that that's really unconventional for a play? So one bit of independence he gets, he doesn't understand how it works.
Yes.
So it's just like... So if we went off to university, I mean, like, what kitchen's like in Freshers, isn't it? It's just like, could you imagine him sharing it like that? Yeah.
Oh, God, no.
And also... I think as well, like you said, the space on the stage is his brain, right? It's his mind. It's also how he connects with other people, and it's all to do with the book. The book then finishes, and everything goes black. So I think what that means is he's lost that connection in a way to everyone else, and there's a lack, therefore, of this connectivity between him and the audience, so basically him and society and him and people. And I think what happens is it goes black, and again he's going to become Christopher in his own little world, in the little bubble.
And that would explain the maths bit and why it's like so kind of, it's kind of shut that bit off, and now it's like back to me being
Back to
Christopher.
my brain, in my
back
head.
to Christopher being
Yeah.
Christopher, maths, and don't really care about, you know, how the world works.
But that is happy in itself then. It's not affected him that he can't access society and he can't be with other people. That doesn't affect him. He's still
If you're not
having
aware, though.
lights and confetti go off in his head.
But if you're not aware, can you be sad?
Exactly. Ignorance is
So-
bliss.
But that's quite a sad ending then, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's sad for the audience.
Sad for us, but not for
We've
him.
gone on a massive journey and it feels like he hasn't. That's why
Right.
I'm trying. That's why when I read it, I
Unsatisfactory.
wanted to find a bit of redemption and
Yeah.
a bit of like a kind of satisfying end, but there isn't one. He
No,
goes
I
back
don't.
to
I don't think it
normal.
is.
Yeah.
I think it's quite a bleak ending in
Yeah.
terms of our engagement with Christopher as the hero,
Yeah.
Right.
because we can see things that he can't, which I think we could then infer how his life is going to be difficult. So we know Siobhan is not going to be with him.
Okay, but like you said, let's go away from Christopher a minute. Look at Judy and Ed. That's been solved. He thought his mum was dead at the beginning of the play, and now she's there having an active role in his life.
But it
again.
wasn't a problem for him.
So there is development outside of him.
Plus
but-
now there's a problem that he's wetting himself constantly because he.
He lives somewhere he doesn't like.
Yeah.
I'm trying here. I'm trying.
Life is bad for Christopher, all right? That's all you need to know. No, and I think
But not from his point of view. So it's happy for him.
Mhm.
no, but I think it is because he asked Siobhan if he can go and live with her.
Yeah, but that clearly doesn't bother him because he has.
No, because look at this bit here. He says on page
Oh.
95, can I come and live in your house? So he's saying this to Siobhan. So I'll have room to put all my things and I won't have to share the toilet with strangers. No, Christopher, you can't. So he's obviously unhappy there. Sorry,
Hi,
miss.
it's sad. The end.
But no, this is why it's really good for you to hear lots of people have different interpretations, because we're trying to say, especially with the lit paper, there is no right answer. So the more you can infer and offer your own personal opinions, the better your answers are going to be. So it's
Yeah.
nice to hear that it could be said like this or it could be said like this.
In a way, when you're in the exam, you need to have us three in your
Mr.
head.
Lavington, Miss Morris,
So you're writing all of the
Sonnet.
points of view, all of the different things.
Christopher, Toby, Sandy, in space. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you really enjoyed it. It was nice to have two other opinions as well as mine.
Let us know in the comments if you liked it with 3 people.
Yeah,
And like and subscribe.
yeah, like and subscribe. So Mr. Lavington here will actually be producing this. This is Miss Morris and I am Miss Sonnet. So thank you very much for listening. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.